This video was written by the Worldwide Dueling member retyopko, and is being voiced by the Worldwide Dueling member retyopko. Hey there guys, this is retyopko, and welcome to the second part in a series we are creating consisting of the bare basics of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. If you have not yet watched the previous parts, please click the annotation on screen to view the current available playlist, and watch from the beginning. In the last part, the Canadian Comrade covered the absolute essential overview of how the game is played, including breaking down how each turn is played, talking about how the main deck is constructed, and talking about how chains are formed during regular play. In this particular video, I am going to talk about the first aspect of the extra deck. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game, there are a number of different special summoning methods that have to do with something called the extra deck. Cards that go into the extra deck include purple fusion cards, white synchro cards, and black XYZ or Exceed monsters. Though during the early days of the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG there was no limit on how many cards could belong in your extra deck, there is now a hard limit on how many extra deck cards you are allowed, with that number being 15. On top of all of this, much like your main deck, your opponent is not allowed to see what is in your extra deck at any given time. In this video, I will be discussing the fusion mechanics in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, with Synchro, XYZ, and Pendulum cards to be explained in later videos. As I mentioned earlier, fusion monsters have a purple color, though they share the same layout as all other regular monster cards. However, unlike all other monster cards, fusion monsters have a specific, unique aspect about them that you can see below in the card text. Listed on almost every fusion monster in the game are specific fusion materials that must be used in order to summon the monster from your extra deck. However, for the fusion mechanic specifically, there's a little more to it. Not only do you need to have the specific fusion materials in your hand or on your field, but you must also have a card in hand that has the capability of fusion summoning a monster. The first card ever printed that had this capability was the card Polymerization, a card whose current card text reads, "Fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials." If all of this is going over your head so far, allow me to simplify it a little for you. First off, you must have the fusion monster that you wish to summon in your extra deck. Second, you must have the fusion materials that are listed on the fusion monster in your hand or on the field. Third, you must have a way to conduct a fusion summon, such as Polymerization. In order to conduct the summon itself, you must activate the Polymerization or other card capable of fusion summoning, send the required fusion materials to the graveyard, and finally then you are allowed to special summon the fusion monster from your extra deck. Congratulations! You just conducted your first fusion summon. Now, however, we are going to get into some of the more specific parts about fusion summoning. A very important thing to be reminded of here is that card text will always and forever come first over game mechanics. This is important to know when we take a look at a card like Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion currently reads, pay 1000 life points. Special summon one level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck. This special summon is treated as a fusion summon. It cannot attack and is destroyed during the end phase. You can only activate one Instant Fusion per turn. With Instant Fusion, you're allowed to special summon any level 5 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, by paying 1000 life points instead of having to send the required materials to the graveyard. Now, however, we get into an even more complicated form of fusion summoning. If you take a look at some cards, such as the Gladiator Beast fusion monsters, you'll notice that they all read, must first be special summoned from your extra deck by shuffling the above cards you control into the deck. You do not use Polymerization. The end bit there that says, you do not use Polymerization, would seem slightly confusing. In cases such as these, the card will always include the way to summon it right on the card text. For the Gladiator Beast cards in particular, rather than using Polymerization and sending the required materials to your graveyard, you can instead simply shuffle the required fusion materials back into your deck from the field. In game lingo, this is usually referred to as a tag fusion summon, as you tag the monsters out much like how you would tag out for a partner in a wrestling match. Related to tag fusion summons is contact fusion summons. While tagging is specific to Gladiator Beasts, other fusion monsters have a similar condition that makes it so you do not have to use Polymerization to summon them. This is, as stated earlier, always going to be included in the fusion monster's card text, so simply reading the fusion monster should make it clear on how to bring it from the extra deck to the field. Finally, some fusion cards don't even contain text requiring any particular materials. In cases such as these, once again, the fusion monster will always include the way to summon it right in the card text. Cards such as Mirror Force Dragon are a prime example of an alternate summoning method to using Polymerization, while still retaining the status as a fusion monster card due to the purple color of the card. Now that your head is full of information on how to bring out these purple cards from your extra deck, let's move on to some more specific mechanics that will only take a second or two to cover. The first of these three mechanics has to do with summon negation. Some cards have the ability to do something called negating, with some specifically about negating summons. If a fusion monster has its summon negated, or if it was not properly fusion summoned in the first place, such as using a card like Summoner of Illusions, which special summons the monster from the extra deck but does not fusion summon it, then it cannot be revived from the graveyard with the effect of Call of the Haunted or similar cards. The second of these three mechanics is short and to the point. Say a card like Compulsory Evacuation Device is used on your fusion monster. Of course, as you learned earlier, fusion monsters do not belong in your hand, but in your extra deck instead. In a case such as this, the monster is simply returned to the extra deck. The same applies for any card that would shuffle a fusion monster into the deck. Rather than being placed into the main deck and then being shuffled, it is simply returned to the extra deck. The final of these three mechanics has to do with the fusion materials that are listed on a fusion monster. Some monsters, such as El Shaddoll Winda, do not require specific name monsters as their fusion materials, instead requiring only that you use a Shaddoll monster and a Dark attribute monster. In this case, you cannot use the effect of something like Elemental Hero Prisma to send a Shaddoll monster or a Dark monster to the graveyard, as El Shaddoll Winda does not have specifically named fusion materials as part of its fusion summoning requirement. Anyhow guys, that's all for this video. If you have not already and you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a comment, liking this video, and subscribing to the Worldwide Duelists. We appreciate everyone who watches our videos, and you guys give us the motivation to produce more content. Always remember, you guys keep the world turning.